hour is Thomas Pierce. He's the author of The Last Rose, A True Celebration of Eternal Life. Now, Thomas E. Pierce married the love of his life, Joanne, on August 13th, 1966. The two enjoyed a happy marriage for more than 37 years and raised two beautiful daughters, Lisa and Kathy. Even after their two daughters left their home in Vineland, New Jersey, to start their own careers, Thomas and Joanne seized every opportunity to spend with the girls. It was during one of these visits in March 2004 the Pierce family was changed forever. On March the 5th, 2004, Thomas and Joanne drove to Baltimore, Maryland for a weekend getaway with their oldest daughter, Lisa. The next morning, the family decided to take a boat tour of Baltimore's Inner Harbor and boarded the water taxi Lady D to take in the sights. In what would become one of the worst accidents in Baltimore's history, the water taxi capsized, throwing all 25 passengers into the frigid waters. The Pierce family was left clinging to the upturned boat awaiting rescue, but tragically, Joanne and Lisa were among the 5 lives claimed that day. In the many months that followed, Thomas struggled to piece together his life without Joanne and Lisa. He began writing stories and giving speeches about them, and slowly, Thomas began to heal. With the encouragement of friends and family, he wrote a book, The Last Rose, A True Celebration of Eternal Life. My guest this hour, X-Zone Nation, is Thomas E. Pierce. He is the author of The Last Rose, A True Celebration of Life, and his website is www.thelastrose.com. When I come back from this commercial break in 2 minutes, The Last Rose, A True Celebration of Eternal Life. His website is www.thelastrose.com. And Thomas, welcome to the X-Zone.
Thank you, Rob. It's great to be here.
Thomas, tell us about your book, The Last Rose, A True Celebration of Life.
Well, it's about the first year of my life after I lost my wife and daughter in the Baltimore water taxi accident in 2004. And it's not a sad book. It's a book about everything that happened that year and how all the things that happened that got me through it. And they're things that I just couldn't explain. They just happened, and I don't know how they happened. I just know they did. It got to the point where I never really expected to write a book. I just started telling people all the stories about what was going on in my life. And at first I would start telling them, and I would expect that these people would want to put me in a straitjacket. But they didn't. They'd look at me and say, you have to write these down so you don't forget them. So I did. But all I did was I put them in a Word document, and I had 1 line per story. And I looked at that one day, and I had 4 pages of 1 line per story. And I thought to myself, if something happens to me, no one's going to know what this is. So I decided I have to write these out. So I did. And I wrote them for myself and my grandchildren so I could share the stories with them later. And when I tell people that I did that, they say, well, can I read it? Sure. So I'd print a copy out and I'd let them read it. And then they started telling me, well, you have to put this in a book. And I didn't really believe that, but I did. And I gave copies to some friends and relatives. And within 1 week after I did that, I started getting emails from people that I did not know, telling me how much the book helped them in their life. And that's when I knew that I had to try and get this published because it was helping other people. And it's made life worthwhile.
Thomas, you said that the girls knew that this was going to happen, and that helped you to cope with it. Now, how is that possible?
I wish I knew. All I can tell you is that for months before the accident, Joanne did things that I can't explain.
Such as, sir?
She would tell me door waiting to go out with me if something happened to you. You know how ridiculous that sounds. And then on other times, one time she said, I feel like I'm dying. And I got upset. I said, do we have to go to the emergency room? She said, no, I'm okay. I just feel like I'm dying. And she told her sister that. And then she told her sister, I'm not going to be here much longer. And, it got to the point where the day after the accident, I realized that nothing happens by accident. And I told my daughter, I'm not surprised that I'm still here and that your mom's not. But I'm really surprised that Lisa didn't make it. And she said, no, Dad. 1 month ago, Lisa called me early in the morning and said, Grandma appeared to me in a dream last night and told me that I would be with her shortly. So when I go into school today, I'm going to contact the legal representatives that we recommend to the students and get the forms to make out a will. And I have the forms that she filled out that day.
Do you believe in predestiny?
I think we're pretty much in charge of our own destiny. We make our own decisions, but I don't think there are any coincidences. I think coincidences are just God's way of remaining anonymous. There's a reason for everything, and I can't explain it, but I certainly do believe it.
How have these tragic events that happened in 2004 had an effect on your religious beliefs?
Well, I can tell you, I've always believed in an afterlife, but I don't care how strong your faith is. When you go to a funeral and you watch that casket being lowered into the ground, I know I always stood there and thought, wow, is this the end? Is this the last? Are we really fooling ourselves about an afterlife? But after having gone through this and seeing the signs that the girls left for me, and then going to a medium, and I wasn't sure I believed in mediums back then, but someone talked me into doing it. And 2 hours with this man were totally life-changing. He told me things that I had done that year and how they were with me that I just couldn't believe that he could come up with that. And the only thing he knew about me was my first name was Tom. And I can no longer doubt that there truly is an afterlife. He had 2 hours with him was totally life-changing.
What did he say to you, Tom, in those 2 hours that changed your life?
Well, for example, he would tell me things like, he asked me at one point, who's Kayla? And I said, well, that's my oldest granddaughter. And he said, I think they're trying to tell me that they watch over them while they're in daycare. And I said, that's very nice. So he said, I think Kayla has a friend at daycare named Casey. And I said, I don't have a clue. Well, he allows you to tape the session. And the next day I played that for my daughter. And we got to that point in the tape, and she said, Dad, Kayla does not have a friend at daycare named Casey. And I said, well, he doesn't get everything right, I'm sure. But there is another little girl in her class by the name of Kayla. So everyone in her class calls her by her initials, KC.
Oh my gosh.
And he went on for 2 hours telling me things that he would have no way of finding out or knowing. And it was inspiring.
Tom, did you feel a presence, a connection with your wife and daughter when you were sitting with the medium? Did you feel their presence?
Oh yeah. come out of there, you're on such an emotional high that you don't truly come down off of it for two days at least. You know, you just get so excited. And I had relatives in upstate New York, and they knew how excited I was, and they were a little leery. They thought I was being ripped off here and led astray. So they came down that year for Memorial Day, and there were 35 of them. And they all sat and listened to that 2-hour tape of that session, determined to convince me that this guy was a fraud. And not one of them could deny that he had a gift that they could not explain. It was just phenomenal.
Does your wife and daughter come to visit you now in dream, or do you feel their presence around you?
I sometimes feel their presence. I don't really dream about them. There's several times my wife has woken me up in the middle of the night to tell me something, and I wake up and on the first anniversary I woke up at 4 in the morning, and I saw a white stand with a bottle of red wine and 2 wine glasses, and I was looking at a blank wall, and I just knew that was there. And I just said, I love you, and went back to sleep. But I don't really dream about them, but they've gotten through to me several times. The 4 days after the accident happened on a Saturday. My daughter was in the hospital until Monday night when she passed, and then we came home on a Tuesday. And that day, I was in the house, and a friend that owns a restaurant had brought in dinner for all 35 of us that were there that day.
Thomas, I hate to do this. We've got to take a commercial break. Please stand by. Thanks very much for being with us, Thomas. Pleasure talking to you. Exonation Thomas Pierce is our special guest. He is the author of The Last Rose, A True Celebration of Eternal Life. His website is thelastrose.com. We'll be back with Thomas Pierce on the other side of this break. Don't go away. Next Chronicles newspaper. My guest this hour is Thomas E. Pierce, and he's the author of a book entitled The Last Rose, A True Celebration of Eternal Life. His website is www.thelastrose.com. And Thomas, what does the title refer to?
Well, Joanne and I were married on August 13th, 1966. And the first month I went out and I bought a rose for her on our anniversary, a yellow rose. And she really liked that. So the second month came along, and I went back to the florist, and I thought, maybe I should buy 2 roses. And then I thought, nah, that could get expensive. So I bought 1 rose, and I bought her 1 rose every 13th